The 28th plenary meeting of the General Assembly is called to order. I declare open the World Social Summit under the title the Second World Summit for Social Development. This meeting is held in accordance with Resolution 78/318 of 16 July 2024 under sub-item B of Agenda Item 25, entitled Social Development, including questions relating to the world social situation and to youth, aging, persons with disabilities, and the family. The documentation under this item is listed in the Journal of the United Nations. Before proceeding to the opening statements, pursuant to Resolution 78/318, the Assembly will now proceed to consider draft Resolution A/80/L5 that contains the political declaration. I give the floor to the representative of the Secretariat.
Thank you, Madam President. The present oral statement is made in the context of the Rule 153 of the Rules of Procedure of the General Assembly. The present statement was distributed also to Member States. The request contained in paragraph 43A and B under the heading Follow-up of Draft Resolution A/80/L5 would entail additional new activities and would constitute an addition to the workload of the Secretariat. However, in the absence of modalities for the mandated high-level plenary meetings under the auspices of General Assembly, paragraph 43A, and the timing of the new report requested in the preparation of the follow-up process of the Doha Political Declaration and the Copenhagen Declaration Programme of Action, paragraph 43B, it is not possible at the present time to estimate the budgetary implications of the new activities. When the format, scope, and other modalities are determined, the Secretary-General would assess the budgetary implications and advise the General Assembly in accordance with Rule 153 of the Rules of Procedure of the General Assembly. Also, once the modalities are known, in accordance with the established practice, the date of the high-level plenary meeting would be determined in consultation with the Department of General Assembly and Conference Management. While it is the understanding of the Secretariat that adoption of draft resolution A/80/L5 would not entail program budget implications for 2026, related resource requirements for subsequent years, as applicable, would be presented in the proposed program budget for consideration by the General Assembly in the applicable years. Thank you, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the Secretariat. Before proceeding further, members are reminded that pursuant to Decision 80/509 of 31st October 2025, any explanation of vote concerning the draft resolution shall be made immediately before the closing segment of the summit instead of at the opening segment. We shall now take a decision on draft resolution A/80/L5. entitled Doha Political Declaration of the World Social Summit, under the title The Second World Summit for Social Development. May I take it that the Assembly decides to adopt draft resolution A/80/L5? It is so decided. I would like to express my sincere thanks to Her Excellency Sophie de Smet, Permanent Representative of Belgium to the United Nations, and His Excellency Omar Hiyal, Permanent Representative of Morocco to the United Nations, who ably and patiently conducted the discussions and complex negotiations on this political declaration. I also express my sincere thanks to His Excellency Philippe Koudelka, the former permanent representative of Belgium to the United Nations, for his work in the initial stage of the process. I'm sure members of the Assembly will join me in extending to them our sincere gratitude. I will now make a statement as the President of the General Assembly. Your Highness, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Copenhagen taught us 30 years ago that social development and inclusion is essential for strong societies. Today, Doha must go the last mile and teach us how to leave no one behind, end social injustice, and guarantee dignity for everyone. In prioritizing a people-first approach, Copenhagen helped to give birth to the SDGs and later the Pact for the Future. We have seen these last 3 decades what power we can have as an international community, as United Nations, when working together, when overcoming divides. Unemployment, which stood at 1 billion people, 30% of the global workforce in 1995, fell to a historic low of 5% in 2024. Extreme poverty declined from 2 billion people in 1990, over a third of the population back then, to just over 800 million today. And access to education and health has increased in every single region. But since Copenhagen, we have also seen that economic growth alone has been insufficient to pull people in all regions out of poverty. And that growth without boundaries or oversight could actually deepen the global divide and the very structures that underpin it. There's a great exercise that schools do that exemplifies these structural injustices, in which students are told to stand at the starting line, ready to sprint forward. Suddenly, the teacher will interrupt and ask some of them to take a step backwards. Those who sometimes go to bed hungry, those whose parents are unemployed, those with no books at home, the girls. It soon becomes evident that even the strongest runners among them have hardly any chance, simply because of where they had to start, for reasons that they had no control over, for circumstances they were simply born into. If the world is like the race I spoke of, then Copenhagen has allowed millions to take steps forward, but far too many have remained stuck or have even fallen further back. 800 million people still live in extreme poverty. In some countries, half of the girls do not even go to primary school. While unemployment has fallen to 5% globally, this hides vast disparities. For instance, unemployment stands at less than 1% in some countries, yet it amounts to more than 30% in others. And young people remain 3 times more likely to be unemployed. This as women continue to earn just 78 cents for every dollar earned by men. That is why this conference, this moment truly matters. To join forces in order to make life fair for everyone, regardless of the circumstances of your birth, or if you live in a region prone to natural disaster or conflict. Allow me to make 3 points on our shared challenges and shared opportunities in delivering on social development. First, we need to urgently address the single largest obstacle facing our pursuit of social development, the climate crisis. We see it time and time again in the wake of climate disasters that wipe out social services and GDP in just an instant. Just last week, Hurricane Melissa barreled through the Caribbean, threatening millions of people and devastating social systems in the process. Such disasters directly account for at least $200 billion in annual losses. Some estimates have this at $2.3 trillion, when others cascading costs are factored in. These are schools, hospitals, livelihoods, all gone in an instant. We are also seeing new epicenters of hunger and poverty emerging as a result of climate crisis. When I visited the Sahel region, I stood in 53 degrees Celsius heat among sand and rocks, where 50 years ago, cotton once grew. Local farmers told me how the rains no longer come when they used to. The wells have run dry, the harvests have withered. This is not just one farm or one country. It is the new frontline of insecurity. Rising temperatures are fueling food crises globally. If we continue like this, it is estimated that if the planet warms by more than 2 degrees, almost 200 million more people could face food insecurity. And this threatens our entire Sustainable Development Agenda, not just SDG 2 on zero hunger. Hunger and poverty are also drivers of displacement, when families are forced to move because of lack of food. And in turn, large-scale displacement puts pressure on neighboring states, straining resources and testing governance, and often driving further insecurity. Thus begins a vicious circle. Climate insecurity leads to hunger and poverty spur displacement and conflict deepens hunger and poverty once more. Yet, on the positive side, we still have it in our power to reduce each future ton of CO2 emissions, to change course now. Fighting the climate crisis and ending hunger and poverty is not merely an act of charity. It is a matter of security and self-interest for all countries. And that brings me to my second point. This second World Summit for Social Development reminds us that in order to tackle these multi-dimensional issues, so too must our solutions and agendas be multidimensional and interconnected. The Doha Declaration, as well as the SDGs, call for holistic strategies because we cannot solve hunger in isolation from health, or poverty without addressing inequality, especially in education, or climate action without ensuring decent work. They are not separate 17 goals, but rather an integrated framework where advancement in one area accelerates progress in others. And these are not siloed agendas. They all underscore that human security is the foundation of global security. Therefore, our most important task here in Doha, as well as next week at the Climate COP in Belém and throughout the whole 80th session of the General Assembly in New York, is to defend and recommit to this vision and so truly solve these cross-regional issues in a cross-regional manner. Because in our deeply interconnected world, no country or region can secure its interest in isolation. From energy security to supply chains to conflict mediation. Take, for example, the attacks by the Houthis on cargo ships in the Red Sea that led to a heavy reduction in shipping traffic here in Gulf ports, but also manufacturing lines that stood still in Europe. Or the other way around, when due to Russian invasion of Ukraine, cargo ships full of grain could not leave the port of Odessa in the Black Sea, leading to food insecurity and exploding food crises also here in this region, as in many other parts of the world. These crises remind us that in this race to fight hunger and poverty, we are not competing against each other. We are running together. And a chain reaction that trips up one region will slow us all down. Which brings me to my third point. Recommitting to the SDGs means filling the $4 trillion resourcing gap and reflecting these commitments in new trade agreements, in technology transfers, and in partnerships that create truly sustainable growth and not only benefit the few. Because we know that one of the biggest problems is not the money as such, but rather how and where it is invested. We have to ensure that these benefits reach everyone, everywhere. We need to create a global financial architecture that is fit for the 21st century, tackle debt burdens, boost international funds, and remove unnecessary restriction that stifle innovation as outlined in the Sevilla commitment. Public-private partnerships, if done right, can power homes and profits alike, reducing emissions while creating jobs, supporting hospitals, and electrifying schools. Similarly, new technologies hold promise to deliver real solutions, providing another avenue for meaningful engagement with the private sector, but also, at the same time, this holds true if we ensure that new innovations do not repeat old biases. As just one example, when Apple launched its credit card in 2019, its algorithm systematically gave men higher credit limits than women. This was not a technological fluke, i.e. models that learn from societies with deeply entrenched discrimination against women risk amplifying those inequalities even further. But the evidence is clear. Everyone benefits when women are at the top, designing, building, and creating these systems. Equal representation of women will ensure that technology empowers rather than exploits. Again, this is not just a matter of doing what is right or what is just. It's a matter of self-interest for all of us. Having men and women equally at the starting line of our new technological era will produce more innovative and representative products, ultimately increasing their profitability. Men and women from all regions, especially from all developed and less developed countries. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we truly live in geopolitical, challenging and fragmented times. And delivering on this Doha Declaration all together in unity won't be easy. But we should draw inspiration from those students lining up for the race, and even more from the millions out there they represent. They never quit, despite all the hurdles. So too must we. With the declaration just adopted, with the promises we made, to level the playing field for all, once and forever. I give the floor to His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations.
Your Highness, the Emir of Qatar, our host, Madam President of the General Assembly, Your Majesties, Your Highnesses, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. The first World Summit for Social Development in Copenhagen in 1995 was a moment of moral clarity. It reminded us that true development isn't about prosperity for the few. It is about opportunities for the many, grounded in social justice, full employment, and human dignity. Since then, over 1 billion people have escaped extreme poverty. Global unemployment is at a near historic low. Access to health care, education, and social protection has dramatically expanded. People are living longer, and child and maternal mortality have declined. And more girls are attending school, with rising graduation rates for all students. These achievements were the result of actions by the global community to deliver on the promise of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Actions by governments to invest in systems that lifted people up rather than leaving them behind. Actions by international organizations and civil society partners to support development. Actions by businesses to ensure that practices enabled, not erased, social development and social justice. And actions by donors to help countries invest in their people, infrastructure, and economies. But this second World Summit for Social Development opens at a moment of high global uncertainty, divisions, conflicts, and widespread human suffering. People are still facing hunger, poverty, displacement, and unemployment. Developing countries are not getting the level of support they need. And we are not moving fast enough to mitigate the volatility and outright destruction wrought by a warming planet. And we are falling short on the Sustainable Development Goals. Your Majesties, Your Highnesses, Excellencies, the Doha Political Declaration represents a booster shot for development. At its heart, the declaration is a people's plan. Bringing it to life requires action in 4 areas. First, a people's plan means accelerating our fight against poverty and inequality. It is unconscionable that nearly 700 million people still live in extreme poverty, with the richest 1% own a nearly half of global wealth. It is unacceptable that millions go hungry every day or die each year from preventable disease. Trends made far worse by relentless global aid cuts. And it is intolerable that almost 4 billion people lack access to any form of social protection at all. Fighting poverty requires targeted, country-led investments and strategies in all the systems that people need. Food systems that can reach all people with affordable, nutritious, sustainably produced food. Universally accessible health systems that can deliver care and medicine to every person, no matter where they live or how much they earn. Water and sanitation systems that deliver clean water to all. Adequate, affordable housing. Energy systems that are clean, reliable, and accessible to all, powering development and jobs. Education systems capable of reaching every child and young person with quality education and skills, underpinned by well-trained and supported teachers. Universal social protection systems that can support people when they need it, and reliable, robust and disaggregated data to track out progress. And progress also depends on investing in the future of our planet. Governments must arrive at the upcoming COP30 meeting in Brazil with concrete plans to slash their own emissions over the next decade, while also delivering climate justice to those on the front lines of a crisis they did little to cause. Just look at Jamaica. The clean energy revolution means it is possible to cut emissions while growing economies. But developing countries still lack the finance and technologies needed to support their transitions. In Brazil, countries must agree on a credible plan to mobilize $1.6 trillion annually in climate finance by 2035 for developing countries. And developed countries must honor their commitments to double finance for adaptation to at least $40 billion this year. And the Loss and Damage Fund needs to be capitalized with significant contributions. Second, a people's plan requires a laser focus on job creation and employment. In every country, governments and the private sector must join forces to promote decent work, living wages, and pathways for workers to transition from the informal economy to jobs in the green, digital, and care economies. Investments in training, skills development, and lifelong learning are essential. As called for by the Global Digital Compact adopted last year, countries should focus on closing the digital divide, achieving universal digital connectivity, and ensuring all people can gain skills in digital technology and artificial intelligence. Creating and sustaining jobs also requires countries to diversify their economies and enhance local processing and innovation to add value and compete in global trade. Any job creation efforts must also ensure women have equal access to jobs while increasing support for care economies. Throughout, we need to strengthen labor protections so profits never come at the expense of workers' rights. Third, a people's plan requires financing. At June's Financing for Development Conference in Sevilla, leaders committed to unlocking more finance for developing countries. National governments must lead the way by mobilizing their own domestic resources. And we also need to triple the lending power of multilateral development banks that need to be bigger and bolder, and more able to leverage private finance for developing countries. We also need to ease debt burdens with new instruments to reduce borrowing costs and risks and speed up support for countries facing debt distress. The global financial architecture must be reformed so it better represents today's world and the needs of developing countries. Developing countries need and deserve stronger participation at the decision-making table across global financial institutions. And global economic governance must become more inclusive, representative, equitable, and effective. Your Majesties, Your Highnesses, Excellencies. Enfin, un plan.
Finally, a plan designed for the people to bring them together. Too many people have been left behind, in particular women, minorities, migrants and refugees, elder persons, indigenous peoples, disabled persons and young people. Many are subject to prejudice, threats, poor treatment, and even demonstrable acts of violence, be this at home, in their workplaces, in the streets, or online. Governments must defend and protect democratic values, ensuring that the voices of all people, including the most vulnerable, whatever be their age or background, be heard. They must continue to lift obstacles to the participation of women, from boards in businesses to political power, and eliminate all forms of discrimination and gender-based violence. There is a need to focus on the needs for a more active presence of women in new technologies. There is a need for AI algorithms not to become bastions of male chauvinism. At all times and in all places, human voices, human rights, at all times and in all places, human rights will remain our compass and will show us the way towards justice and a future peace for all people. Your Majesties, Your Royal Highness, Excellencies, this summit is placed under the sign of hope, hope with collective action. There's a need to mobilize political will and necessary financial resources to pursue the voyage that we have started together and did so 30 years ago in Copenhagen. We have the Doha Declaration, and thanks to this, we are going to achieve this far-reaching plan because humanity is calling for it and deserves it. Thank you.
I thank the Secretary General. I invite His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Emir of the State of Qatar, in his capacity as host country, to address the Assembly.
In the name of God, most compassionate, most merciful, Your Excellency, the President of the General Assembly, Your Excellency, the Secretary General, Your Majesty, Your Highness, Your Excellencies, peace be upon you. At the outset, I would like to welcome you all to Doha, wishing you a pleasant stay. The State of Qatar takes pride in hosting this summit, which is held 30 years after the first summit in Copenhagen in 1995. This is an occasion to reiterate the spirit of solidarity and international cooperation, to address challenges that hinder economic development and slows down human development, a matter that threatens social security. We do believe in the importance of collective work on matters that should not cause divergence. And we are keen to enhance social development and to support international efforts to eradicate poverty, increase job opportunities, and to take all efforts necessary to uphold human dignity to achieve a better and more equitable future for all. In this occasion, we do commend the efforts made by Mr. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, which represent his interest in developing the work of the United Nations organization. We would like also to thank the DESA at the United Nations for the efforts made towards the coordination and organization of this summit. Dear guests, social development is not a choice, it's an existential necessity, and whilst we celebrate this year the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, we should take the opportunity of this summit to reiterate and to recommit ourselves to the Charter of the United Nations and multilateral efforts, together with doubling down on our efforts to enshrine social development as a main foundation for security and stability for all. At the national level, the State of Qatar has attached special importance to social development and has achieved clear progress according to the indications issued and published by competent international organizations, and we work on improving the quality of life, welfare and prosperity, in addition to developing education, economic empowerment, health and family care, as well as social protection. The State of Qatar, through the Ministry of Family and Social Development, has launched its 2024-2025 strategy under the slogan "From Care to Empowerment," which is based on creating a community and a society that is based on the equality of opportunities, and which comes in line with the 2030 vision of the state. At the international level, we are cognizant of the fact that challenges hinder social development, as poverty and social inequality and unemployment. All this calls upon us to make consolidated efforts, and we cooperate closely with the United Nations in this regard, and we have spared no efforts towards honoring our undertakings and our commitments towards this goal. The State of Qatar will continue to be an active partner in the international community, and we will continue to support all efforts of social development through the aids and contributions made by Qatar to several countries and societies through the Qatar Development Fund and the Qatar Charity Association. Dear guests, the bare minimum that we need in order to show seriousness in our addressing all these challenges, such as challenges related to environment and human rights, is to uphold our commitments. When it comes to social development, this needs to translate the commitments that we have made as countries in the Copenhagen Declaration. This should be translated into reality by addressing the gaps in the implementation of those commitments, and to give priority to out-of-the-box and creative solutions, in addition to building partnerships and to be persistent on the road of achieving the 2030 Agenda. The Doha Declaration that was adopted in this summit is the fruit of relentless efforts and unwavering work, as well as consultations that were held in New York, and it is an ambitious document towards the achievement of the desired social development. And in this regard, we would like to commend the efforts of Belgium and Morocco and the United Nations for their efforts towards the facilitation of intergovernmental consultations and negotiations. And we are confident that the Doha Declaration, which reiterates and stresses the moral and socio-economic vision of social development that is based on human dignity and human rights, as well as equality and peace, will give impetus and momentum that accelerates the achievement of the 2030 Agenda, and this will represent a roadmap and a robust foundation to address all social development issues, especially poverty, unemployment and social exclusion. It's impossible to achieve social development in any societies without peace and stability, and we do believe that constant peace and not temporary settlements is just peace. And it's very obvious, it goes without saying, that the Palestinian people need all forms of aid to be able to recover from the devastation that was caused by the Israeli occupation and the apartheid system in Palestine. We call upon the international community to double down on its efforts and to provide support to the Palestinian people for reconstruction and to secure the basic needs for this resilient people until justice is administered and until they manage to exercise their legitimate rights on their territories. When it comes to peace and stability, when it comes to peace and stability, I would like to conclude by saying and by mentioning that we were shocked by the atrocities that were committed in Al-Fashir in the Sudan. Were we in need for another piece of evidence to recognize that any manipulation of stability in countries will eventually lead to such shocks and catastrophes and carnage? The Sudan has been going through this carnage and manslaughter for 2.5 years. It's high time we stopped this carnage. We need to achieve a political solution that achieves the territorial integrity and stability of the Sudan. Dear guests, our success will only be measured by our ability to represent and to translate our commitments to tangible procedures which are translated into social development for all, especially in developing countries. And together we can transform this summit into an important juncture that gives rise to steps that would eventually contribute to transferring and translating our slogans of peace and prosperity into a lived reality. In conclusion, I would like to reiterate my welcoming of you to Doha, and I wish that this summit would lead to its desired goals. Thank you, and peace be upon you.
I thank the Emir of the State of Qatar for his speech and for hosting this summit. I give the floor to His Excellency Lok Bahadur Tapar, President of the Economic and Social Council.
Madam President, Your Highness, Amir of the State of Qatar, heads of the state and government, honorable ministers, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor and privilege for me to join in the opening of the Second World Summit for Social Development. I thank the State of Qatar for hosting this summit, and I am grateful to His Highness, the Amir of the State of Qatar, for his leadership and hospitality. I also thank my colleagues, His Excellency Omar Hilale, permanent representative of Morocco, and Her Excellency Sophia De Smith, permanent representative of Belgium, for skillfully steering the negotiation that led to the Doha political declarations. Their work has resulted in a balanced and forward-looking declaration that embodies our shared commitment to advancing social development. Excellencies, since the Copenhagen Summit 30 years ago, the world has seen extraordinary social and economic progress. People are healthier, they are more educated, and they are more connected than ever before. Yet, we are still far from reaching the SDGs. Only 35% of the SDG target are on the track, and governments are grappling with diminishing opportunities for meaningful employment, widening inequalities, and growing insecurities. On this, the Doha Declarations is a milestone. It underscores the urgency of strengthening the social dimensions of social development. And it calls for actions on 3 interrelated priorities: ending poverty, ensuring full and productive employment and decent work for all, and promoting social inclusion. Excellencies, over 800 million people still live in extreme poverty. In addition, billions live very close to the poverty line. Even a minor shock, a sudden illness, unexpected expense, the loss of a job, or a climate-induced disasters can send them into poverty. Informal employment continues to affect over 80% of workers in Africa and 70% of workers in Asia. Income and wealth are increasingly concentrated at the top. Today, the world's richest 1% of the populations own more wealth than 95% of humanity combined. Nearly 2 billion people globally remain uncovered or inadequately protected social protections, without the safety nets that cushion shocks, preserve dignity, and enable resilience in the face of crisis. And societies are increasingly divided and polarized. Confidence and trust in institutions seem to be eroding. Distrust fueled by misinformation and disinformation fractures social cohesion and undermines our ability to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Addressing these myriad issues lies at the heart of the mandate of the Economic and Social Council. Excellencies, the 80th anniversary of the Council is an opportunity to renew our joint commitment to its enduring values, cooperation among nations, inclusive development, and the dignity of every person. Those principles have guided the Economic and Social Council since 1945. They continue to define our work today. The 5-year review process agreed in the Doha declarations provides an important opportunity to measure progress and renew momentum. The General Assembly will lead that effort, and the ECOSOC system will support it by bringing together governments, UN systems, stakeholders to translate shared commitments into actions. The role of the commissions for social development will be pivotal in this regard. We should spare no effort in establishing ECOSOC forums and segments provide important opportunities to connect global policy with actions on the ground. Excellencies, under Nepal's presidency, ECOSOC is advancing global cooperation on food systems, financing for development, climate resilience, and digital inclusion and youth entrepreneurship. Issues that underpin poverty, education, decent work, and social inclusion. Our policy guidance support implementations at the local, national, and regional levels, strengthening the government's efforts. The UN system's analytical and evidence-based support runs throughout the Council's work, and providing space for the diverse voices of stakeholders, including youth, women, and persons with disabilities. We ensure that our deliberations are rooted in the realities on the ground. These strengths will be fully mobilized to advance the commitments we make here in Doha. ECOSOC will continue to work with member states, the UN systems, and partners to ensure that the Doha declarations translate into tangible progress in people's lives. Let us carry forward the spirit of Doha with unity of purpose and shared determination to build societies rooted in dignity, opportunity, and inclusion for all. I thank you.
I thank the President of the Economic and Social Council. We've heard the last speaker in this opening segment. Before giving the floor to the first speaker on the list of speakers, delegations are reminded that statements are limited to 5 minutes. I would like to appeal to speakers to deliver their statements at a reasonable pace so that interpretation into the other official languages may be provided properly. As members are aware, pursuant to Resolution 78/318, in addition to the plenary meetings, the summit will have 2 high-level roundtables. The first roundtable will start this afternoon at 3 p.m. I invite, now my microphone is not, I invite His Excellency Abdulatif Jamal Rashid, President of the Republic of Iraq, on behalf of the Group of 77 and China, to address the Assembly.
Your Excellencies, distinguished delegations, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to deliver this statement on behalf of Group 77 and China. First and foremost, the group takes this opportunity to thank the co-chairs of the intergovernmental process and the permanent representatives of the Kingdom of Morocco and Belgium for their leadership, tireless efforts, and thoughtful guidance throughout this process. The group also conveys its sincere appreciations to the State of Qatar, its leadership, and people of the generosity, warm hospitality, and excellent arrangement that have enriched our deliberation at this historic summit. We gather today in Doha with great hope that this meeting will inspire concrete progress in advancing the welfare and dignity of all people. As we approach 2030, the international community stands at a pivotal moment, one that calls for resolve to translate our commitments to tangible outcome in the lives of, of all our nations. Though our path and achievements may differ, our shared aspiration for more just and secure world unite us. Let us this summit be a step towards a deeper cooperation and solidarity among nations in pursuit of that common vision. Against this background, this background, the group wishes to emphasize the following points. First, we must redouble our collective efforts and place equal emphasis on the 3 pillars of social development to achieve the commitment made 30 years ago. Addressing the existing gaps and inadequate means of implementation remains a pressing challenge. The principle of common but differentiated responsibilities must remain central, as the international cooperation and solidarity are indispensable and to addressing these challenges. Second, the group underscores the urgent need to confront persistent social development challenges by reducing uncertainty, inequality, and insecurity, while upholding human dignity, human rights, and fundamental freedom for all. Third, the group welcomes the measures undertaken by member states to promote equal opportunity, inclusion, and social justice, and reaffirm its full commitment to ensuring that all individuals are empowered to participate fully in social, economic, and political life. Fourth, the group welcomes the inclusion of racism as a cross-cutting issue in the outcome text, highlighting the need to stop up our efforts to fight against all forms of racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerances. However, the group regrets that genuine progress in addressing this enduring scourge still falls behind our aspiration. Fifth, the group stresses that migration is an ember of development and recognize the positive contribution of migrants to inclusive growth and sustainable development in countries of the origin. Transit and destination. We acknowledge the importance of addressing the nexus between international migration and social development in a comprehensive and balanced manner. Six, while technology is an essential tool for achieving development goals, access to its benefits remains unequal. The group, therefore, emphasizes the urgent need for concerted action to bridge the growing digital divide. Seventh, the group underscores that social development cannot advance while many developing countries continue to face UCM, a unilateral coercive measures, while directly and negatively affect the well-being of their people. The group reaffirms that measures impede in economic and social progress and calls for the complete elimination. In conclusion, the Group 77 and China reaffirms our shared commitment to balancing people at the center of development. Let Doha mark a renewed resolve to act with unity, compassion, and determination so that the promises we make today become a living reality for all. Let us leave no one behind. I thank you for listening to these comments. I have the second speech on behalf of Iraq. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Deliver my speech on behalf of Iraq in Arabic.
Your Excellency, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, Your Highness Prince of the State of Qatar, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, Mr. Antonio Guterres, United Nations Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, may the peace and mercy and blessings of God be upon you. At the outset, I wish to convey my sincerest thanks to the State of Qatar for its generous hosting of this summit, which is held at a very critical juncture as we are about to launch a new era which requires a renovation of international commitment to social justice and the strengthening of decent work and the establishment of more just societies. Equally, I wish to address my thanks to the United Nations and its specialized agencies for its unstinting support for member states in their implementation of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and for its active partnership alongside Iraq on our developmental path. Equally, we thank all participating states for efforts made in preparing the Doha Declaration, which represents a quantum leap towards a strengthening, comprehensive, inclusive and sustainable social development at the global level. Ladies and gentlemen, our meeting today under the second summit is held over 30 years since the Copenhagen summit in 1995. It constitutes a new opportunity to review achievements and to proceed with a forward-looking attempt to contain the situation and to preempt the impact of highly complex crises, social crises, climate crises, etc., which necessitate social justice. We firmly believe that investing in humans is the optimal path that leads to justice. Social justice is an existential requirement for decent life. Discrepancy in opportunities, economic opportunities, climate threats, drafts, poverty, etc., all mean that the international community must assume yet a bigger responsibility in upholding the very principles that underpin social justice. In the aftermath of decades of war and terrorism in Iraq, we firmly stand on this path towards social development through reducing poverty, improving education, healthcare, and empowering women and youth, and strengthening the participation by persons with disabilities and the elderly in the public sphere. Iraq, during the recent years, has made major progress in the reform of the social protection system. We moved from humanitarian assistance in times of crisis towards a more sustainable and just system that is underpinned by human rights and social security. Ladies and gentlemen, Iraq ratified in 2023 the ILO Convention 102 on social security floors, thus upholding our international commitments. We made tangible progress in terms of social protection over the last 4 years. Poverty rates have decreased. This is telling of the impact of structural reform in favor of social development. We have expanded the basis of beneficiaries in a tangible manner, which now it reached 140% of those benefiting from social security, in addition to an increase in the amounts dedicated to social security. As we move from support to productivity, we have launched a unified program that benefits tens of thousands of individuals, in addition to support to small and medium-sized enterprises. This led to a reduction in unemployment rates and empowered women economically. The social development is a collective responsibility that includes civil society and the youth, particularly as we joined in 2024 the ranks of those countries with a large presentation or portion of youth among its population. This prompted us to improve job opportunities, the development of skills, and the focus being placed on entrepreneurship in favor of youth and women. As to climate change and its impact, direct impact on social development, we suffer from water rarity and desertification. Therefore, we launched the Green Iraq initiative that seeks to address such challenges through various projects of renewed and clean energy. Between 2024 and 2023, we are focusing on the increase of renewable energy share and a clean energy share, in addition to an increased participation by the private sector in this effort, and a focus on agriculture to improve air quality and climate adaptation. We have also adopted a comprehensive strategy focusing on agricultural infrastructure and the improvement of food quality and diversity to attain self-sufficiency when it comes to food production. Equally, we are linking social protection to the agricultural sector through support to small agricultural businesses and medium-sized agricultural businesses, with a focus on female-led businesses and a focus on infrastructure in the rural areas. Social development cannot be attained without economic, cultural development. Therefore, we are focusing on good governance and enhancing democratic participation and countering corruption, as these underpin any society that seeks to attain welfare and prosperity. We are committed to transparency through the implementation of the digital transformation program and the unification of our databases, which improves our targeting of corrupt individuals when it comes to making sure that benefits reach those that are in dire need for them. We equally focus on healthcare and health protection, always in line with UN standards and principles. Iraq has adopted a national development plan covering 2024-2028, in addition to a strategy for the alleviation of poverty and the Iraqi Vision for Sustainable Development 2030 and the 2050 Iraq Vision, in addition to a national employment vision to guarantee decent work and secured work for all. Challenges social development is faced with are well entrenched. These include inter alia, migration, climate change, among others. This necessitates comprehensive and joint work. We have established specialized and ad hoc funds to address such challenges and to support development at the governorate level. Countering poverty, corruption, and other aspects that plague our societies, including illegal migration, drugs, etc., will undoubtedly be conducive towards improving the livelihood and living standards of our citizens around the world. Iraq stands ready to support the international community in establishing a more just and equal world where human dignity and rights are always upheld. We are fully confident that this summit will allow for such a new just and sustainable social development. We reiterate our thanks to the State of Qatar for hosting this summit and the United Nations for their efforts and the international community for its support. And we look forward to fruitful outcomes of the current summit. Thank you very much.
I thank the President of the Republic of Iraq. May I remind delegation again that statements are limited to 5 minutes. There's a timer. I invite His Excellency William Samoei Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya and Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces, on behalf of the African Group, to address the Assembly.
Madam President, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the African Group, I extend warm appreciation to you, Madam President, and to the State of Qatar for hosting this historic summit, a moment to renew our shared promise 30 years after Copenhagen to place people at the heart of development. We associate ourselves fully with the statement delivered by the delegation of Iraq on behalf of the Group of 77 and China. Excellencies, 3 decades after the first World Summit on Social Development, the world can point to real progress in reducing poverty, improving food security, expanding education, health, and social protection. Yet, persistent and widening inequality within and among nations continue to erode these gains. Global systems of trade, finance, and technology remain unequal and exclusionary. Poverty, unemployment, and social exclusion have been and remain the defining challenges of our time. Confronting them is not charity, it is justice for humanity. Across many sub-Saharan and sub-regions in Africa and Western Asia, hunger is rising, growth is slowing down, and vulnerability is deepening. Health and education systems are under strain, and energy deficits hold back opportunity. Beyond income, inclusion depends on access to essential services that empower individuals and protect dignity. Universal access to affordable and quality health care is not a luxury. It is a right for every human being. Housing insecurity, manifesting through homelessness, overcrowding, and substandard shelter, continue to breed inequality. As housing costs outpace wages, affordable housing must become a cornerstone of social development. Informal and precarious employment remains yet another of the gravest obstacles to stability and growth, particularly in low and middle income countries where millions live close to the poverty line. Ladies and gentlemen, the digital divide is emerging as one of the greatest barriers of our time. Access to affordable connectivity, access to devices, and digital skills must become universal. Education must include every learner, empower every teacher, and reach every community, including persons with disability. As Africa, we believe that transforming informal sectors, enhancing productive capacity, and expanding access to global markets requires stronger international cooperation in line with the Addis Ababa Action Agenda and the right to development. We therefore call for comprehensive reform of the international financial architecture to make it fair, transparent, and responsive to the needs of developing nations and its people. We urge decisive action on debt distress and progress towards United Nations Framework Convention on international tax cooperation. We also underscore our call for a UN Convention in sovereign debt. Distinguished colleagues, the Copenhagen Declaration gave us a timeless framework built on 3 pillars: the eradication of poverty, decent work for all, and social integration. Grounded in equity, solidarity, and human dignity, these pillars remain our compass. We therefore welcome the Doha Declaration on Social Development, a renewed global pledge to translate principle into action and to build cohesive and resilient societies for generations ahead. We commend the co-facilitators, the permanent representative of Morocco and Belgium, for their leadership in guiding this important progress. This summit, distinguished colleagues, must rekindle genuine dialogue, restore trust, and reaffirm multilateralism as the anchor of collective progress. We must amplify the voices of those living in poverty and vulnerability and ensure that developing countries, most of them in Africa, are fairly represented across all multilateral institutions. Accordingly, the African Group reiterates its demand for 2 permanent and 2 non-permanent seats for Africa on the UN Security Council with full rights and privileges. True social development cannot thrive without historical justice and equal representation. The African Union has declared 2025 the year of justice for Africans and the people of African descent through reparations. This is a defining step towards justice and healing for Africa and its diaspora, calling for accountability for the crimes of slavery, colonialization, apartheid, and exploitation that caused lasting human and environmental harm. We also reiterate the importance of the high-level General Assembly meeting in September 2026 to mark the 25th anniversary of the Durban Declaration and Program of Action and invite all partners to support its successful implementation within the second decade for people of African descent. Together, let us envision a future that is inclusive, resilient, and just. A world free of hunger, poverty, disease, racism, and inequality. A world where prosperity is shared, the digital divide is bridged, and trust in multilateralism is renewed. I thank you. Allow me, Madam President, having just addressed this assembly on behalf of the African Group, I now have the honor, with your kind indulgence, to deliver Kenya's national statement. In the years since Copenhagen, the world has made tremendous advances in science, technology, and innovation, transforming lives and transforming economies. Yet amid this progress, poverty, inequality, unemployment, and social exclusion persist, and in far too many places they have deepened. In Kenya, through our bottom-up economic transformation agenda, we have charted a deliberate roadmap to confront these challenges head-on, and I am proud to share a few of its key highlights. We recognize that education is the most powerful equalizer in society. That is why Kenya has fully transitioned to the competence-based education and training system that emphasizes practical skills, innovation, and lifelong learning. Equally, to make higher education equitable, we introduced a student-centered funding model that guarantees access to quality education for every learner, regardless of their social or economic background. In 3 years, we have hired 76,000 new teachers, a number that will reach 100,000 by January 2026, improving the teacher-to-learner ratio from 1 to 45 to 1 to 29, putting us on course to meet UNESCO's 1 to 25 benchmark by 2027. We have also rapidly expanded technical and vocational training institutions across the country, ensuring that learners gain market-ready skills aligned with the needs of industry and entrepreneurship. Beyond education, we're empowering citizens economically through initiatives like the Financial Inclusion Fund, popularly known as the Hustler Fund. To date, the fund has disbursed Kenya shillings 80 billion, an equivalent of US dollars 615 million, to 26 million Kenyans. It now accounts for more than 9.5 million repeat borrowers, including 5 million individuals who have successfully restored their creditworthiness through consistent repayment, enabling them not only to re-enter the formal credit market, but also access higher borrowing limits and better financial terms. At the same time, together with partners, we are launching programs such as the National Youth Opportunity Towards Advancement Project. Over the next 5 years, it will reach 1 million young Kenyans, training them in skills that are on demand, financing startups, and enabling access to government procurement opportunities. We are equally committed to protecting the most vulnerable members of our society, including the elderly, orphans, widows, and persons living with disability. Through our National Safety Net program, commonly known as Inua Jamii, what began as a modest monthly support to 500 households has now expanded to reach more than 1.7 million families across the country. Madam President, Excellencies, through the Affordable Housing Program, we are delivering much-needed shelter while at the same time creating jobs and fostering inclusion. Today, over 230,000 housing units are under construction nationwide, employing more than 340,000 Kenyans and expanding opportunities for local artisans and small businesses. We are also expanding pathways for labor mobility through bilateral agreements with partner countries, like here in this great country of Qatar, where over 70,000 Kenyan nationals are proudly working and earning a decent living and contributing to inclusion back at home. In just 3 years, over 400,000 Kenyans have secured jobs abroad, sending home remittances that support families and strengthen our economy. In the digital economy, nearly 2 million Kenyans have been trained in digital literacy, and over 300,000 young people have accessed digital jobs in e-commerce, business process outsourcing, and innovation hubs. Through reforms in health, ladies and gentlemen, the number of Kenyans with medical insurance has grown from 8 million in 2023 to 27.2 million today, ensuring that no one is denied health due to inability to pay. In deliver transformative results. Yet, in an interconnected world, national action alone cannot overcome global inequalities. It is therefore incumbent upon us today to stand together with renewed resolve to confront and dismantle the entrenched structures that enable global exclusion and perpetuate inequality. Regrettably, Madam President, I note that this Doha summit convenes at a time when global solidarity is in advancing social development has weakened considerably. 30 years ago, in Copenhagen, the world spoke with one accord and acted with common purpose. Today, however, that sense of shared conviction has significantly dimmed. Faced with new and complex crises, from climate shocks and conflict to unequal trade and debt distress, nations are too often divided by competing interests, inward-looking nationalism, and short-term calculations. We witnessed it in the inequitable distribution of COVID-19 vaccines, in the unmet pledges in the climate finance, and in global systems that privilege power over partnerships. The consensus that once bound us together in Copenhagen is fraying. The world risks retreating into isolation at a time when cooperation should be a priority. Excellencies, as the UN at 80 initiative reforms process unfolds, the time will soon come for all of us to make critical choices about the mandates and structures of the United Nations. In doing so, we must resist the temptation to elevate one pillar of the UN at the expense of others. The United Nations was founded on a holistic vision of delivering global peace and security, human rights, and development. These are the three inseparable, indispensable pillars that together sustain global stability and human dignity. I have no doubt in my mind that while the UN must remain the foremost guardian of global peace, it must also be a catalyst for prosperity and a champion of human dignity everywhere and anywhere. The Doha Summit must therefore renew our shared resolve to act decisively, both as individual nations and as a united global community, to eradicate poverty, create decent work, and advance social inclusion as the surest path towards a world that is truly resilient, inclusive, peaceful, and sustainable. I thank you for your attention.